when you are nervous, it's when you work best, because you sit and you consider and you're dialed in because you're scared of making a mistake. I need to talk as a commentator, right? And my big fear before the Champions League final in the 10 minutes before was that I wasn't going to be able to talk. I wasn't going to open my mouth and words weren't going to come out, or the right words weren't going to come out. And then I'd freak out and I'd just stop. And to be able to take those nerves, the fact that I can sit here and say that I instinctually, without knowing, turned those nerves into a real positive, I'm so proud of. So I don't fear being nervous anymore.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by sports broadcaster, commentator, reporter, host, presenter and in-venue announcer Ellen Ellard, who is here to talk about navigating the world of sports broadcasting. Ellen's broadcasting journey began at 14 years old by volunteering at her local radio station, and her journey has taken her to work with organisations such as the BBC, the English Football Association, London Marathon events and Sky Sports in the UK. Ellen is now the lead Women's Super League commentator for Sky Sports. And here's a wee bit of a fun tidbit of how Ellen and I met. We got connected through the wonders of social media, that was LinkedIn, but it all started when I was listening to the commentator while watching a Rangers game, Glasgow Rangers, for those who know me as my beloved team, and I was struck by the preparedness of Ellen in terms of the content that she had done, the knowledge she had of our players, the knowledge she had of how the season was going at that particular time. That's not something you could just Google on a given day and then come up with something. And then the delivery, because I know firsthand that sports commentators are very, very divisive. You either like them or you don't. And typically it's related to whether your team's winning, whether your team's winning or not. And then you're kind of like, he's okay. She's really fine, or whatever it is. But I was just so enamored by how enjoyable of an experience was, because the game was not going our way. I actually mentioned it on my other podcast that I do for the North American Rangers Supporters Association, and just thought, by the way, if you listen to this or if you watch this in North America, I should say, then you probably heard this commentator, and I thought she was excellent. Then the next week, she shows up again, and I thought, no, there has to be something to this. So then I Googled, who is commentating on the Rangers game today, and I got Ellen's name, and then I went to LinkedIn and I seen Ellen there, and I just, on a whim, had said, I'd taken a bit of a bet on myself to say, I think what you're doing is brilliant. Would you be willing to come and have a bit of a chat about your journey and such? And Ellen was so graceful and gracious to say yes, and we had a wonderful conversation prior to recording. So I'm absolutely delighted to have a bit of a Rangers connection there, but also something that I'm really, really genuinely interested in, which is sports broadcasting, because it can be a very difficult journey through that particular industry. So Ellen, all that to say thank you very, very much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. So I mentioned a wee bit about your journey there, just in terms of the age that you started. But when we were, prior to recording, we were chatting about the general interest and the lack of any real connection that you had in terms of your family or friend circle, or any motivations from teachers at school and such. So tell me a bit more, fill in the blanks of the background as to why sports broadcasting.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like you say, I didn't have any family connections. I think you look particularly in the UK and in England, you start to join the dots between some of the names of the broadcasters and, of course, then footballing connections. And I didn't have any of that. My dad was a firefighter and my mum is a dental hygienist, and all of our family have very traditional career paths. I was just obsessed with radio. To the point where I'd go up to bed, I'd turn the radio down really quiet to make sure mum and dad couldn't hear me listening to it late on in the night. And it just was a real passion of mine. I remember talking to some of my teachers about stuff I'd heard on Radio 1 in the UK, and yeah, I just developed a real passion for it. And at the same time, I was competing in athletics. I was playing football. I was playing rugby. I come from a really sporty family. And so I think now looking back, my parents would probably say all the signs were there that I'd join the dots at some point and try and create a career out of it. Um, I just didn't really have a passion for anything else. Those were such deep rooted passions in me that I thought I'm just going to take this and run with it. So at 14, joined a local community station, started volunteering. And after that, it was just chasing any opportunity I could get. Didn't go to university, decided that because I'd already picked up a job at the local BBC station while I was in my last year of school, that I was just going to take a risk. I knew that I could always go back to uni after a year or two if I didn't think that it was the right decision. But thankfully never needed to go down that route and just climbed up the ladder internally at the BBC, all the way up to BBC Radio 5 Live, and then made the switch over to Sky and television not too long ago.
Absolutely incredible. So the original passion wasn't specifically sporting related, it was more just providing information to people via radio.
Yeah, so would stay up late listening to Annie Mac on Radio 1, her and Nick Grimshaw when they were on the late shows, Annie Nightingale as well. I just had a passion for radio. I'd always had a passion for music. My dad is really into music. And so listening to those late night music shows where you heard something different to what you'd usually hear on daytime radio was always felt like a bit rebellious. And that's probably as far as my rebellious spirit has ever gone in my life. So yeah, I'd say, while there was obviously that real passion for broadcasting, I always had the passion for sport. That was the way I was raised. So like I said, it wasn't ever going to be long until the dots combined and I made a career out of them both.
Fabulous. So then in terms of what was the first break into sports, what was that at your volunteer role, or did that come a little bit later?
Yeah, no, that did come a little bit later. I always wanted to work in the sporting side of things when I first got into the BBC as well, because I was going to my local team, supporting my local team with my grandpa, and so it just seemed sort of natural to then go and use that knowledge that I'd accrued over the years of going and watching football into the sports show. So I started producing the sports show at BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. That was a behind the scenes role for a very long time. And then during lockdown, started to take on some more on-air roles when they were short of presenters and there was only a limited number of us. I was already presenting the new music show, but always wanted to be sort of on the sports side. And then it was at the end of lockdown where I got offered a job at Manchester City to be their women's team presenter in stadium and doing content bits as well. So then made the leap up to Manchester and moved up to 5 Live as well, who not too long before I moved up to Manchester had also relocated their offices up to Manchester as well. So it all aligned quite nicely.
Yeah, it seems to have been very, very intentional as well. Then you get into the industry. You mentioned earlier you have no connection to the industry, but then you start to feel the community feel or the I don't want to say nebulous or anything like that, but just because many industries are like that. It's not just sports where different people have different connections with different different family members or friends or such. You get in there. Was there one particular role model or one particular even mentor that you had that you said, that's where I'm going, that's where I would like to be?
Yeah, I think I've got to separate the two. Growing up, obviously, I always watched Gabby Logan, Claire Balding. For me, those were two real icons and leading the way for female broadcasters on just normal television. We didn't have Sky growing up, so those were the two on the BBC that I saw week in, week out. So I'd say those two are probably the main two. But then in terms of commentary, it wasn't until I was a lot older that I started hearing Vicky Sparks, Robin Cowan, Jackie Oatley. And then those were the ones that really made me think, oh, I can do this as a career. I've never been that, I haven't had that desire to be on screen and have my face on screen. So hearing female commentators, I was like, wow, okay, that is a role I could do. And, that was when I was growing up, there wasn't many of them. I know obviously Jackie Oatley was the first to commentate on Match of the Day. So yeah, I think those influences have grown and those role models have grown. And I'm so lucky now to say that I at 26 still have role models, which I think is, you don't really get that in other industries as you get older, that you have still would say you have role models. Then in terms of mentors, I have been so lucky that I found a guy called Rob Nothman, who came to my local radio station when I was 18, 19, came to the BBC station and did a session with me about athletics commentary. Then we reconnected when I joined 5 Live in Manchester. And then after that, when I went freelance, he listens to my commentary. We have sessions where he goes through, fine tooth comb, picks out everything. And it is so useful to have someone who is unbiased, removed from everything, and
Yeah.
can give me top level advice. And he's worked with some of the best in the industry, along with his other half in terms of business, a man called Matt Curtis, who you in North America, you might not know the name, but you'll see a lot of his work because he produces the CBS show for the Champions League. So obviously quite popular on that side of the pond.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky to have particularly Rob, but in recent years as well, Matt, as mentors, because it's really hard in this industry to find unbiased advice and feedback. So
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to have those two who have my back and also give me the best advice for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear. And I was wondering if your mentor was going to be a male or a female. So it's very interesting that you have the male, because one of the key things when I mentioned the divisiveness of commentators in the beginning, I'm speaking specifically about Rangers TV. The football channel that we watch over here in North America for most of the games, and even our own guy who is of our persuasion as a Rangers fan is very divisive. And then I think about adding in a female component to that. And Rangers TV, to my knowledge, have never had a female co-commentator along with the main commentator, who is a fellow by the name of Tom Miller. But I then think back to not too long ago when female commentators became more prevalent in mainstream football. And my dad, who has since passed but was almost 85 when he passed, he just could not grasp the concept of having a female commentator there. And it was just comedy for me. I just his reaction, because it was so violent, like verbally violent. And I'm saying, but are you actually listening, or are you just completely closing yourself off? And I would try and educate him, to say there's a human being there. Like, you can't just shout at every single person connected with the sport. But it's been predominantly male dominated before the rise of the Women's Super League and other leagues around mainland Europe, and certainly in North America as well. Women's football was very, very big. How did that play out for you in your early stages with the various sports that you've covered, but primarily football, which for anyone listening in North America is soccer from this point forward? How did that play out? Was it an easy entry for you? What types of barriers have you come across?
Yeah, there's always the usual abuse online, which is fairly standard, and I come off X because of it. Not so much because I got a lot of it. I'm grateful to say that I never went looking for it, and I think that's always a key thing, is you have to be so disciplined within yourself as a female commentator, or any woman, I think, working in the industry, that you protect yourself first. And it is so tempting. I know from other commentators, other women in the industry, that it's so easy to search your name when you've got a low sense of either self-confidence, or you've got those voices in your head telling you to do it. I've just never done it because it's not worth it. And X had just got into such a horrible place, just generally, that I was like, I'm not winning, I'm not gaining anything from being on this platform. So I stopped. I came off X completely not too long ago, and I don't feel worse off for it at all. So that's one of those things where I've been able to remove myself from the situation, which I should have the option to be there. And I think not so long ago I did find it really annoying, because I was born in 1999, so I've always, for most, like all my adult life since I was probably 15, I've had a phone and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of that. I've grown up with it, and it kind of felt, when people were coming to attacking my mates on social media, my colleagues, I was like, it's so annoying that I can't just like go to my place of calm and quiet on social media and scroll, it kind of felt like someone was coming to my door and knocking on my door, because that's how connected to my phone I was. So it was actually turned out to be quite a good experience to just say, that's not real life. I can take a step back. So that's the big one. That's the one that I think everyone talks about when it comes to female commentators, whether it be, I think, just women in the industry as well. I think that's always one of the big talking points. We understand as well that the men get it. As you've already said, it's not just female voices and female commentators that are divisive. We know the men get lots of abuse as well. We're not shying away from that. It's just the more targeted type of sexist abuse that we do get, that needs to stop. If I've got something wrong in a commentary, by all means, call me out for it. I'm totally fine for that. In the same way that I'd expect that for the men as well. It is just like, if you hear a female voice and you suddenly say, get back to the kitchen, then that's where the line is, I think, for me. You get the usual stuff as well, going into a press box and being the only woman in the EFL, in League One, League Two, even in the Championship. There's so many games I went to where I was the only woman. And I went to Huddersfield once, I remember, and it was quite a sad moment. I was walking down the hill. It's quite a long, before you get to the press entrance at Huddersfield, it's quite a long slope. And I was walking down the hill, and the woman there already had my press pass in her hands. And I was like, oh, thank you. I was like, that's weird. She knows me. And she was like, you're the only woman. So I knew it was you when you were approaching the door. And there's one of those things where you sort of laugh about it to start with, and then you get in the car and you think about it, and you're like, so how long have I been the only woman for? Because I'd only been to Huddersfield once that season.
Yeah.
Has there been any other women at Huddersfield that season? And that's not a slight on Huddersfield at all. That's just the state of the press situation there. And sometimes it is hard, because I've had incidents where things have been directed at me, where I've been, either someone's put a hand on me and they wouldn't have done it to a man. And if you are in a press box that's surrounded by men, it's quite hard to know who to then go and talk to immediately, and you find yourself sitting on things. But I have to say, the world has got a lot better than it was. And I am so lucky, and I'm so grateful for those who have paved the way in front of me. So I'm not dealing with as much as some of the names I've already mentioned had to at the start of their careers. And for that, of course, I'll always be grateful.
Yeah, it's just awful. I mean, I don't know why the word anti isn't put in front of social media, because for the most part, it is antisocial. I spend most of my time, I do have a presence on a lot of platforms, but I spend the majority of my time on LinkedIn, because it's civilized and the majority of people are there to talk about business or talk about cool things that would influence, the betterment of your own life and things like that. And you kind of forget about the reality of that some people are facing, especially women in the workplace in male dominated or male cultured industries, where like this commonplace, one of the first things you said there was, I got the usual abuse. I mean, the fact that even just flows off the tongue so readily by saying, well, it's just the standard level of abuse. It's not the really bad stuff. It's just the normal stuff. That's just not good enough in this day and age, and I think history will tell that at a point in time, you and your peer group for right now will also be the pioneers that future generations of sports broadcasting women will look to and thank for paving that lesser of an abuse focused past as well. So like, I can't commend you enough. I think it's absolutely incredible what you do, and that's not the purpose of this conversation. The purpose of this conversation was, I think you're an exceptional commentator, and I wish everyone else truly, honestly, would do the level of diligence and the level of delivery and the level of caring. Quite frankly, is what I've heard through, because I've obviously heard a couple of. I keep saying heard, but I'm watching, but I'm I can't see you, so I'm listening to. And just that it's quite rare. And I've been watching football for over 40 years now, and just to have someone, and I never even thought about it in this way, Ellen, like someone where I would say, if there's a game that Ellen's commentating on, I would, if I wasn't doing anything else and it wasn't even Rangers, I would absolutely consider going and listening to that. I've never said that before, ever, with anyone else. So
I don't think anyone said that apart from my mum, so I'll take that. And even my mum doesn't listen all the time.
I get the same on my. I do the weekly podcast for NARSA, and I I say, did you listen to the podcast? Someone will ask a question and I'll say, it sounds like someone didn't listen to the podcast. But what I do, and maybe it's very different from a live commentary perspective if you get something wrong, but I have a segment each week where I'll say, and I don't have to use it each week, thankfully. I'll have a segment each week that starts with what Gaz got wrong last week, because I don't hear any feedback about anything. And then as soon as I get a date wrong, as soon as I get a player wrong, as soon as I get a score wrong or whatever that
Yeah.
looks like, I become very popular from all across the world, where they're saying, that was 1972, not 1978, or that was actually Paul Gascoigne, it wasn't, such and such another person. And I'm more than happy. And every single time, here's a tidbit, you can use this if you like. Every single time anyone ever says you got that dead wrong, the only thing I say is, thanks for listening. And
Thank
that's
you.
it. And I just
No, I
leave it
love
at
that.
that. And they're like, but actually, thanks for listening. You didn't have to,
Yeah.
and off you go to take it from there. So, in terms of the actual main challenges, has there been? Do you feel that there are more and more opportunities opening up now as you and your peer group and your predecessors in the industry have grown up in the industry, and people get more used to more used to your voices, more used to your presence, more used to your analytics and your commentary and your professional delivery?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. I think part of that is part of the general expansion of women's sport on a whole as well. I don't want to just say football, because we've just had a Women's World Cup in England as well that was won by the Red Roses on home soil. And I think you could probably, hopefully, in a couple of years' time, say the same about India winning the Cricket World Cup on home soil as well. I think when these moments start, when they happen, it creates a ripple effect and a domino effect around not just those, because you look at then the attendances, of course, off the back of 2022 and the Lionesses win, but also, the broadcast figures went up. There was more demand for more commentators on women's sports. So I think it goes hand in hand, doesn't it? I love the fact that I get to work predominantly on women's football. I also love going and do Europa League and these other competitions as well. I did the men's under 21 Euros over summer. Working on the EFL, working in these incredible games as well. So yeah, I think it does go hand in hand with the growth of women's sport as a whole. And there definitely are more opportunities, and it's great to see women taking them with so much confidence. I see women who are like a couple of years younger than me coming through and being like taking opportunities with both hands, when I would be, maybe I started and I'd be like, oh, hesitant, or didn't want to film myself or shout about what I was doing. And there's still part of me that doesn't really put too much on social media about what I'm doing. And then I see my colleagues who are shouting about themselves, and I'm like, that's great. I love that you have that confidence and you have that positioning within the game where you can be like, yeah, this is the commentary I'm doing today. This is the game I'm working on today. So yeah, it's so nice to see it grow, and it's so nice to see it being more accepted. I see women being defended online when, the trolls come for them. And I love that as well, because I'm like, great. I see all these male, TikTok users, Instagram users going, if someone's put a bad comment and it's totally unnecessarily, them go, come on, grow up. And that's so nice that we're now seeing that change. So yeah, as a whole, more opportunities. As much as we talk about the negative side, I do see a lot of the positives as well. So I don't want to just make it all negative.
Yeah. And it's just good to acknowledge with authenticity some of the challenges that have been faced by
Yeah.
certain groups and industries, and I'm sure there's tons of males that have been in some way hit that glass ceiling at some
Yeah.
point in their life, because they're not connected, because they're not
Mm.
educated, because they're of a particular race or
Yeah.
religion or belief system or things like that, and it's trying to challenge that in as respectful
Yeah.
and progressive a way as we possibly can to move forward. So what would you say thus far in your commentating journey or your sports broadcasting journey has been the highlight or highlights for you?
I have to give two, because commentating on the Women's Champions League final this year in Lisbon with Arsenal beating Barcelona was absolutely incredible. And for me, that was quite a turning point in how I handle things as well, because I was so nervous ahead of kickoff. And I've never really felt that before to that magnitude. I was terrified. And the
Right.
fact that I sort of took some deep breaths and got the job done in to a level that I was really proud of, was a real turning point for me. So I'd have to say that Champions League final, and obviously nice to get a win for an English team as well. I was working for TNT Sports, so I was allowed to be a bit biased, and to beat Barcelona, who are just a formidable outfit when it comes to the women's team. That will go down in my memory for a very, very long time. And
Yeah.
then commentating on the Olympic Games, as I said, coming from an athletics background, to then do the men's football and the women's football as well as the athletics at Paris, somewhere that is not too far away. Can get on the. I think I went there on. Did I fly or did I go on the? I can't remember whether I went on the Eurostar, whether I flew. But again, that just shows how close Paris really is to England. And of course, like I had some nice connections in that I studied French growing up. My mum speaks French. We used to go on holiday in France quite a lot, and so for me that was really special. I was able to take my parents as well, which was really nice to see them in the stadiums enjoying themselves, and then I'd have to go off and do my commentary. But yeah, I'd say those two are career highlights, just I'd retire happy now, I think, off the back of those two.
And if you think back to 10 years ago, pinch yourself moments
Oh,
to
100%.
say
Yeah.
the Women's Champions League final would be a thing, would be
Yeah.
as popular as it is in and of that moment, and then the opportunity to actually go and commentate on it, and then
Yeah.
diversifying your portfolio, as it were, to be looking at other sports. I'm interested to go back and just do a wee bit of digging on your nerves prior to the Champions League final. How did that come about, and how did it manifest itself differently to other nervous situations you might have actually
Yeah,
encountered?
I think it's really interesting because I haven't really reflected on it that much. Apart from it was lots of, I get a lot of the voices that makes, but like not voices, but in terms of thoughts, like invasive thoughts, I've had to deal with a lot in whether it was when I was running, whether it was different parts of my career, I've had to work really hard to control those invasive thoughts. And it was just being my head telling me I wasn't good enough and I was going to mess up the intro and it wasn't going to be very good and all of that. And I just sat there so quiet. And I'm such a joker usually in the gantries. I'm having a laugh. I'm taking the mic. And my co-commentator was like, "What's wrong with Ellen?" Like me and Jen had worked together. Jen now works across plenty of channels in the US now. She's US based. Jen Beattie, former Arsenal centre back, and she was looking at me and she was like, "This is what's wrong with you?" And I was like, I just froze before. This is obviously before, and then put the headphones on and it's get to work. And actually, I look back at it now, and the nerves were such a positive thing because for my intro, I just went through every line and I said every line slowly, and
Yeah,
I delivered it. And reflecting on that recently with my mentors, they were like, that Champions League final, they were like, and a couple of instances since when I did my first Sky Games this season on a new contract, they were like, when you are nervous, it's when you work best because you sit and you consider and you're dialed in because you're
yeah,
scared of making a mistake. And I was like, that is so interesting. And I'm so proud of like taking that. I need to talk as a commentator, right? And my big fear before the Champions League final in the 10 minutes before was that I wasn't going to be able to talk. I
yeah.
wasn't going to open my mouth and words weren't going to come out, or the right words weren't going to come out. And then I'd freak out and I'd just stop. And to be able to take those nerves and then 6 months, I don't know how far away we are from June now, I lose complete track. When was it? End of May. So however many months on now, the fact that I can sit here and say that I instinctually, without knowing, turned those nerves into a real positive. I'm so proud of. So I don't fear being nervous anymore. That doesn't scare
Yeah.
me. That I will feel, I'm going to do jobs in the future. Hopefully, it'll be really sad if I don't do jobs in the future where I get nervous, because obviously that's a sign of progressing in my career. But
Yeah.
I don't run away from them now. So yeah, it's about when those moments, those nerves hit, trying to dial in and charge at them head first instead of letting them completely sit on me.
I love that sentiment of not fearing the nerves anymore. They're here to They're here to serve. They're here to help me. They're here to channel my energy and such. That's because I care and because I want to
Yeah.
do a good job and such. And not so much I don't believe there's such a thing as imposter syndrome. Apologies to all the academics out there that are concentrating on imposter syndrome right now, but there's literally, from a medical perspective, there's no such thing. But, just those feelings of angst and not
Yeah.
good enough or less than and such like that can be so debilitating. So it's absolutely fascinating that based on all the work that you've done to that point, that in the preparation, back to what I said on my intro, that the preparation work is it's exceptional, and I just haven't paid that much attention to other ones because it hasn't been like that, to the
Mhm.
point where I'm kind of like, this interesting that this English commentator would know so much about us, and just absolutely incredible. But then to fall back on the preparation work that you've done, to be able to say
Mm.
you've got this, you have what you need to be able to get off to a good start, to dissipate the nerves to an
Yeah.
appropriate energy that's going to let you perform, because ultimately that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then and do the best job. And you mentioned earlier it was one of the moments you were most proud of. But yeah, that's incredible. Not to fear the nerves, almost to be nervous if the nerves aren't there at some point in the
Yeah.
future.
No, 100%, 100%. And I've recently done some more work with my mentors, and I'm leaning into a psychologist now on it about how I can also be not so nervous about being comfortable, because I've all my life I've had to really fight, and I've been living in a constant state of fight or flight with my job and with the way that my life has panned out. So actually, on the flip side, how to be okay with being comfortable. And it's exactly that. It's making sure the nerves are there for the right moments at the right times. But
Yeah.
when I go home, I'm not scared of feeling comfortable. And so it is really interesting. And the psychology behind it, um, I I think is really interesting, and I'm really glad that I studied psychology at A level, and so I'm not afraid to now go right. I do need to work with a psychologist because it is part of making my career, having more longevity in my career, having more longevity in the relationships of the people I have around me. Because if not, I don't want to be constantly coming home after I've made a small mistake and tearing myself apart.
Yeah.
The acceptance that nerves will be there, enjoy them, mistakes will happen. It's just my mistakes happen in front of X amount of thousand of people, and the acceptance of that as well. So there is so much. I think I'm quite lucky that I did come through an athletics background and that I have a sporting background, because I do see it as performances, and I also see it as how can I um, how can I take that athlete's mindset point of view into my job, with the
Yeah.
openness to learn, to be coached. I love being coached. That's why I pay to have my commentaries listened to and advice given to me. Some people would find that absolutely atrocious, but I really value it,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Taking that sporting mindset into my career, I think is so useful.
Incredible. It really is. And if you want, I'm biased because I'm a coach, obviously, but if you want to get better at something, you need to get a coach. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
obvious to me, and
Yeah,
sounds like to you as well, Ellen, where, your natural gifts and talents and enthusiasm and education will take you to a good spot and you could have a
yeah,
good career and enjoy yourself. But if you're looking to say, where's the improvements? Where, am I restricting myself in any way? Are there opportunities that potentially could come my way if I have, an
yeah.
understanding of how I act and react in certain circumstances or situations, and how I can perform better in
Mm,
those? Everyone needs that type of style of help, and quite honestly, more and more people are becoming aware of
yeah,
that. Not the same amount of people are interested in actually
yeah,
doing the work, because
yeah,
that is what it is in and of itself. So I think from a sporting background, you're absolutely right in that it's a natural, normal thing to have coaches, to have people there to help support you. You look at any individual sport
mm,
today, tennis, when you look at the Grand Slam tournaments or some of the bigger tournaments, and they say, "I'd just like to thank my team." And you look over in the box and there
yeah,
are coaches for sleep and nutrition and health and wellness, and obviously
mm,
the tennis and the mechanics and the strength and things like that. And it's those it's those differentiators, those 1-2% gains that you
Yeah.
can get here, get there, get used to getting the feedback. Maybe in the beginning it's a wee bit uncomfortable. Then as you mentioned earlier, it's coming from an unbiased spot.
Yeah.
They're just looking to say, here's what I see. Take it on board. Take it for what it is. Here are some do's and don'ts. Here are some potential alternatives. Or it's a play-by-play conversation. I don't know how it actually goes. But once again, I'm now not surprised how exceptional you are in your craft because of the work that you're putting in the background. So I'm so delighted to have that conversation with you. What advice or guidance would you give to anyone who's thinking of getting into the sports broadcasting industry, especially women in today's industry? What would be the main points of advice?
So I would say, to start with, the main thing that I say to everyone at the minute is resilience. Like, you're going to need so much resilience. It's not easy, regardless of who you are, where you've come from, what your background is. It is so many hard yards. It's not glamorous. There's such a small percentage of people that will go on to have glamorous careers from this. It's lots of driving in the dark, being alone, beating yourself up, feeling awful when you get in a car and you drive home. I had a great game at the weekend. I got on the train and I then started questioning things. And I was like, I had a great game. But you overwork and you overthink. So I'd say build resilience, grow a thick skin is such an awful way of putting it, because I got told so many times when I was growing up, grow a thick skin, you're going to need a thick skin. And I was like, nah, what you on about? Like, I like being passionate. I like that I wear my heart on my sleeve. And only really in the last year have I gone, no, that is just not the right way to approach it at all. So as early as you can, start to get into that mindset of you're going to need a thick skin. I prefer to say the resilient side of things. You're going to need to be resilient. And that's where coaching comes in. That's where experience comes in. It's where making mistakes comes in. You have to make mistakes. You will make mistakes. Be okay with that. I'm still not okay with that. That's why I've, reached out and asked for help with that side of things. And then just in general, like, do not storm in somewhere and think you're going to be a commentator if you're 17 years old. That thankfully was never me. I was always the person, this is, again, I don't want to blow my trumpet too much, but I'm really grateful that I had that vision to be like, I love the industry so much, I'll make a cup of tea. Whereas I work with I do mentoring now myself for students either coming out of uni or who are about to go into uni, to help them make the right choice and decisions for them. And what I say is just go and offer to make cups of tea. You're going to have to do unpaid work. That again is really difficult because it does put up a barrier to some, as we've already mentioned, people who can't afford to pay for the travel themselves, and it's still a really bad thing of the industry. But if you are able to consider the unpaid work, put yourself out there, make the cups of tea, ask to shadow. Don't just go steaming in thinking you're going to be the next Gabby Logan, the next John Murray, the next Ian Dennis. It doesn't work like that. We all start from the bottom and we all work our way up. And the best experiences I've had and the best learnings I've had have been through making the teas, making the coffees, talking to people behind the scenes. And it has made me a better broadcaster now because I had those experiences. So don't try and jump ahead. Don't try and rush up the ladder. Take your time, be patient. I think sometimes people look at me and go, oh, it will happen really quickly for Ellen. And yeah, I totally appreciate that it did. But also, I started at 14. So I knew how to drive a radio desk at 14. I was building my own shows, editing everything at 16, 17, job at local radio at the BBC at 18. So when you look at it, in reality, it has been a longer journey. Don't then, because you look at Ellen and you think, oh, she's 26 and she's got a Sky contract, or she's regularly commentating on Sky, or she's done the Olympics, don't compare yourself to that. Everyone has an individual journey. I don't talk too much, outside of these kind of situations, which I also don't do that many podcasts to talk about my experiences. So people will look at me and go, oh my gosh, she's doing this and she's so young. It's not, everyone's story is different. So comparison is the thief of joy. Do not be comparing yourself to anyone else. Focus on your lane. Again, I think particularly for women, we're, told to pit ourselves against other women so early on in our lives. So that competitiveness will always be there, but just try and dial that in. It wasn't until I was 21, maybe 22, that I was like, okay, I don't need to worry about what so-and-so is doing. I just need to focus on me. So those would be my two big bits of advice.
nuggets of gold. One thing that really resonated with me there was, and I talk about this in class when I'm teaching at the university and such, is I keep trying to say, if you have a great game and something is going well, as you said, you're coming on the train, you start to second guess yourself. So what I say to them, it could be, in your case, a game or an event of some description. And in my industry, it could be a meeting, it could be a coaching session, it could be a talk that I'm doing, it could be a lecture, it could be anything that's happening. There's the one that you practice. There's the one that you plan for. There's the one that you actually have, and then there's the one that you should have had. And it's the three of them are the same one, but there's only so much preparation and planning you can do to ready yourself. What's going to happen is going to happen, and there's going to be something after the event where you're thinking, you know what, that I could have taken that one a wee bit further, or I maybe should have just shaved a wee bit off of that one. I kind of felt like I overdid it or whatever. And once you start to normalize that conversation, firstly with yourself, to say note to self, and it's not to bash yourself over the head or anything like that. It's to really genuinely say, I wonder if I do that quite often. And it might be something that you could say to your mentors, can you look out for this for next time?
Yeah.
Or I felt like I did that. And then they would be able to explain their vantage point of that. But knowing and understanding, there's the one you plan, the one you have, and then the one that you should have had. That's just the cycle. And then if you take the learnings and then actually make those learnings, actually part of your overall wellness and growth, patterns, then you're going to be in a better spot as you go forward. There's going to be those incremental gains as you're moving forward. So I'm loving the gold nuggets that you just provided there in terms of that. So, as you know, this is called The Best You podcast. And what I like to do is take this opportunity to ask every guest, what is one regular practice? You've mentioned a few of them, but what's one regular practice that Ellen employs to give her the best opportunity to be the best version of herself?
Well, I've got plantar fasciitis at the minute, but usually running would be my go-to. I've had to make some changes, so cut down my running mileage quite a lot, which is really disappointing. But yeah, on top of what I've said already, so asking for feedback, having putting money aside to pay for coaching of different types and understanding that that's required. I would say running as well. Being disciplined and making time for my friends and family, which again has only come very recently. I'd say those are my main ones.
As a runner myself, I do sympathise with you on the plantar fasciitis. I'm very, very fortunate. I haven't had that before, but I've had.
Oh, it's not good. Don't recommend it.
I know.
Stretch those calves.
Exactly. I've had my fair share of calf stuff. I had another episode a wee bit earlier this year where I lost about 3 weeks or so, and not that I take it for granted. I don't like that terminology in and of itself, but when I get to a spot where I can't run, or it's going to do me more damage than good to continue to run, it's at those points that I have to really, really work on myself to say, you're very blessed with the health that you have. You can go on the bike, you can go for a walk, you can do some yoga, you can do some strength work. There's something you can do. You're not completely incapacitated. So I do understand what some of the angst can be, because for me it's very therapeutic. I get to flush a lot of stuff out there. I get a chance to get some fresh air. I get a chance to just kind of see things, which is great. Wonderful. Okay, so before I let you go, Ellen, this has been absolutely incredible. Where can people find out more about you?
So I don't really post too much on social media, so I don't want to let anyone down, but I do have obviously LinkedIn and Instagram are like my two main ones. And if you just search my name on both, you should find me. And it is a very obvious picture of me with my my headset on, I think, from when I was doing Soccer Saturday. So yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram are my two.
Tremendous. Ellen, I knew I was really looking forward to this one. I say that to every guest because it's actually true, but there's some that I look forward to a little bit more because it's in my lane, or there's just some level of excitement about it. And this is one I was genuinely really excited about, and I'm so delighted to have the conversation and so delighted to learn a little bit more about you. Congratulations. Thank you for everything that you have done and will continue to do in the sporting broadcasting world. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.